Hey guys, I wanted to talk some more about search warrants. Now, as we said before, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution says that you have a right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, and no warrants will be issued except upon probable cause. But over the course of the years, with case law and precedent building blocks of what has occurred out in the world, the court tempers this to what's reasonable and not reasonable. And here are some exceptions to when a warrant is needed. These are times when a warrant is not needed, and the court has decided that this is reasonable. Okay? Now, these are situations, as the slide says, where a warrant is not going to be needed. But when you go to a suppression hearing, that's where you're going to go to a hearing before a trial where the judge decides what evidence will be allowed in and what evidence will be excluded. He will decide based on your testimony. And so you're going to have to describe how you got yourself involved in these varied situations, why you didn't need a warrant. Okay? The first of them is the emergency exception to the warrant requirement. So, for example, you're the police, you got to call 911. There's a lot of screaming and yelling in an apartment. You get there and you hear somebody in there screaming, help me, he's chopping me up like Hannibal Lecter. Are you going to say, hold on, baby, we'll be back in 5 hours with a warrant? No, you're going to kick the door down. Why? Because it's an emergency, right? What if she screamed, help me, they are chopping me up? So you kick the door down. And when you're in there, you see one guy and he drops a gun. Okay, you got me. And in the back room, you hear crash, bang, boom. Remember, she screamed, they are chopping me up. It's reasonable to expect that there might be a second player in there, right? So you can now do a protective sweep where you can go look around for where a person could be hiding. You can look under the bed. You can look in the shower. You can't look in the medicine cabinet because little people don't hide in there, right? So you can look around that place as long as you're describing why you had to do a protective sweep. You don't want to get shot on your way out the door, right? While you're in there doing your protective sweep, you might see things in plain view. So as you're going from here to there, on that table over there, you see another gun. On this table over here, you see a scale with a pile of weed on it. You can seize those items. As long as you're in a place legally, be able to see things without moving things around, you can seize them in plain view. Now, another exception to when you need a warrant is the Chamel doctrine. And the Chamel doctrine is if you are in someone's residence, you're in someone's home, and you arrest them in that home, how much of the house can you search? Can you search the whole house? No. The Chamel doctrine says that you can search in and around the person's lungeable, grabbable area, where their wingspan would go to, okay, their arm length. You can't go up into the bedroom. If they lived in a castle, you can't go up into the 4th floor by the turret. It's their lungeable, grabbable area around them. Another time you don't need a warrant is a consent search. Can we search? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Okay, that's a consent. Or let's say you and I are roommates and we each have our own room. Police come and they're interested in me. And they say, hey, do you mind if we look around? You can give consent to look in the living room that we share, the bathroom that we share, the kitchen that we share. But you can't give them permission to look in my room because you don't have control over that room. Okay? Another one is the Carroll doctrine. I spelled it wrong. Sorry about that. The Carroll doctrine is about your car. Now, if the police have probable cause that there's something in my house here, they have to go get a search warrant, barring an emergency, right? Or exigent circumstance. They would have to go get a warrant. However, in my car, because cars are so readily movable in and out and all around, the court decided in the Carroll doctrine, which comes out of an old bootlegging case from way back when in Prohibition, that if you have probable cause there is an item in a vehicle, you can dive right in. You do not need a warrant. Got the idea? And another one is the plain feel doctrine, or otherwise known as immediately apparent. This is always one of my favorites. You can see how these things are evolving over the course of time, right? Something's occurring out in America right now that's going to cause case law and now new precedent, right? You had a right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, but now it's reasonable to come in your house without a warrant if it's an emergency. It's reasonable to look around in there if you can do a protective sweep. It's reasonable to seize items that are in plain view without a warrant. It's reasonable to search in and around a person's area where they were arrested through the Schemel doctrine. Do you see how these things? The Carroll doctrine. There were no cars when they wrote the Constitution. The court evolved over the course of the years and said it's reasonable to seize items in a car with the Carroll doctrine if you have probable cause. You don't need a warrant because the car is so readily movable. Do you see how it's evolving? Case law, precedent, good. Remember Terry versus Ohio? In the video I posted about that, we said that Terry versus Ohio is a case in which the police can stop you and they can frisk you for weapons based on reasonable suspicion, not probable cause, but back at reasonable suspicion. They reasonably suspect you're about to commit a crime, and then they have an articulable, they can explain a fear for their safety through all the body language. You dipping around, what do you want, what do you want? You're not showing them the right side. They don't want to get hurt. They're not getting hurt for you, right? So they're going to stop you and frisk you. Hey, cowboy, calm down. They're going to see what you got in your pockets. Now, remember, Terry's only for weapons. So follow this logic. The cops see you peeking in car windows. They reasonably suspect that you're going to break into a car. They watch you, they hide in the bushes. They walk up to you and say, hey, man, what are you doing? And you start dipping behind a garbage pail and you're not showing them your right side and you're reaching down. Well, they're not going to get shot. So they squeeze your pocket where your hand is, thinking you might have a weapon. It's a frisk, right? They squeeze in the pocket. And they hear clack, clack, and the cop yells, he's got crack vials on him. If the cop can explain how it was immediately apparent, as soon as he touched that pocket, he knew there were crack vials. Now he's going to have to explain. I do nothing but deal with crack all day, crack heads, crack dealers, crack, crack, crack. I do everything there is with crack except smoke it myself. If I can't sleep, I count little crack vials. 1 vial, 2 vial, 3 vial. Go to sleep, right? He can say, as soon as I touched them, based on all my experience, I knew they were crack vials, so I seized them. And the court might say that that's okay. Think about this. Reasonable suspicion you're about to do a burglary, they approach you. Terry versus Ohio says they can frisk you for weapons. They go to frisk you for a weapon, and they feel crack vials. Now, if you grab a guy's pocket, and you go, oh, he's got something in there, and you start moving it around like this, and you go, I wonder what that is, and you start playing with it, and then you pull them out, and there's 2 prescription meds that are not his, an aspirin, a button, and a peanut M&M. That won't hold up because it wasn't immediately apparent to you what was in his pocket. That's a fishing expedition. Terry versus Ohio is for weapons, right? Don't forget about that. So, Fourth Amendment says you need a warrant, right? Warrants based upon probable cause. However, here are some exceptions to when you don't need to have a warrant. Got the idea? Everybody cool with that? Sounds good. Now, let's get into this. Since the Fourth Amendment says you have a right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, that's great. But it doesn't say what happens if you are subjected to an unreasonable search or seizure, does it? Now, you could always sue the police in civil court, but the evidence might have been allowed in against you way back when, even if it was seized in violation of your rights. In the Weeks case, as you can see on the slide, in 1914, well, it was 100 years ago. The Weeks case, the court said, this is only for federal courts. So in other words, if you were arrested by the United States of America by federal agents. In the Weeks case, the court said, if you are arrested by federal agents and tried in United States courts, illegally obtained evidence cannot be used against you. So in other words, if the federal agents kicked your door in, dropped you on your head, searched around, found something, and locked you up, it will be excluded. It cannot be used. It wasn't until the 1960s in the MAP case, MAP versus Ohio, where the Supreme Court said that all states throughout the land must have a measure of the exclusionary rule. It Americanized the exclusionary rule. Got the idea? Everybody had to have a measure of exclusion. Now, it's not in the Constitution. You can hold it up, shake it around. It's not going to fall out. It's not in there. It's a judicially created remedy. And what was the problem that needed to be remedied? Police illegality, right? Bad searches. It has one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to prevent and deter police misconduct. That's the only reason there's the exclusionary rule. And just like anything else, the exclusionary rule started to expand its borders like an overflowing river. And so the court, in a couple of cases, took this on. One would be Arizona versus Evans. Long story short, cops run a guy's license plate, comes up belonging to this guy. They run his name. His license is suspended. They pull over the car. Are you so-and-so? Yes, I am. They lock him up for a suspended license. They search him because that's another exception to the warrant requirement. I forgot to put that in there. You can search someone after you arrest them. SILA, search, incident to lawful arrest. And they find a bag of weed. I forget if they find a monitor in the car. Anyway, it turns out his license was not suspended. The computer clerk screwed up, or DMV screwed up, or somebody who's in charge of a piece of paper and dropped it on the floor and said, I'm not picking it up. And they went home, and that was the guy's license reinstatement. So his license wasn't suspended. So this goes back and forth from the Arizona trial court to the Arizona appellate court to the Arizona Supreme Court to the United States Supreme Court. Throw it out, keep it in, throw it out. And the United States Supreme Court brings it back, brings the weed back and says the weed charge stands, even though he should never have been pulled over in the first place. Who screwed up? Did the police screw up? No. The clerks, the DMV guys, whoever it was, who didn't update the computer. The cop acted in what? Good faith. Believing that the warrant was valid, he pulled the guy over. Well, the suspension was valid. Okay? And so everything that came from that stood. The exclusionary rule was not to make court clerks take care of business in the courthouse. The guy was not going to get off on that one. Another example would be you and I are the police, and we want to get a warrant to go in that house over there. We want to kick the door down, but we know we can't do that because that would be a violation of the Fourth Amendment. We need a warrant. There's no emergency. So we go to a judge. We say, hey, judge, this is what we know. We have this, we have that, we have this, we have that. We tell the judge. He's a higher authority. Judge says, okay, fellas, sounds good. Here's a warrant. We kick the door down. We discover all kinds of evidence. The attorney gets the warrant thrown out. Says, listen, there's no probable cause on this warrant. It's all hearsay, reasonable suspicion, rumors, innuendos, all this kind of stuff. Another judge throws out the warrant. Since the warrant should never have been issued, we should never have gone in the house. And since we should never have gone in the house, we never would have found the contraband, right? Sorry. That guy's still out of luck. Because why? We acted in what? Good faith. We went to a judge. Who screwed up here? The judge screwed up. We executed what we believed to be a valid search warrant. And as such, we acted in, that's right, good faith. And so whatever evidence we found stays against the defendant, even if the warrant was no good. Finally, if you look down the bottom, there's the Quarles case. Perfect example of case law. Fifth Amendment says you have a right not to be compelled. I'm going to do another thing on Miranda. I already put one in the announcement, so take a look at it. You have a right not to be compelled to be a witness against yourself. Right? That's the Fifth Amendment. Miranda comes out of the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. It's a combo platter, right, of all these different past court cases. You can grab somebody in an emergency. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? Where's the gun? And if he tells you where the gun is, if it's a public safety emergency, the statements won't be thrown out. Now remember, Miranda needs to be when you're in custody and interrogation. Unless the court feels that there was no time for Miranda. It was a matter of life and death at that moment. The Boston bomber case might have come up to be a Quarles exception case. Little kids are in a store. So the guy chases a guy in there. He puts a gun in the shelves. I got a new gun. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? Little kids are coming in to get their quarter drinks and little Fritos and everything. One of those little kids are going to find that gun, boom, and blow their little heads off. So what happens is, where's the gun? Where's the gun? And the guy goes, oh, it's behind the Pringles. You grab the gun. Those statements will stand even though he wasn't Mirandized. Why? The Quarles exception. Got the idea? That's the exception to having to Mirandize someone. But you're going to have to explain to a judge why it was an emergency. Why it was a public safety issue. Got the idea? Okay, guys, pick up the phone. Any problems? Anytime? Any questions? Let me know. Thanks, guys.